GCSE Warfare Through Time, short revision clips. We are looking at the First World War, 1914 to 18, and your case study of the Battle of the Somme, July 1916. Now, the First World War, as you probably realise, developed along a 600-kilometre line of trenches, dug in the ground, stretching all the way from the English Channel to Switzerland. This became a stalemate as both sides established positions, protected by machine guns, barbed wire, sandbags, and you just get that seemingly never-ending war of attrition continuing across no man's land, soldiers suffering terrible conditions, both sides pounding each other with artillery shells. On the Western Front, soldiers experienced great boredom, cold, lack of sleep, noise, rats, lice, disease, rain, mud, death. Truly horrific experience of modern warfare. And by 1916, the British and French allies were desperate for a breakthrough and to end this war. So they planned an offensive. It was to take place in the summer of 1916 along a 30-kilometre stretch of trench lines in northern France near the River Somme. Now, this offensive was split into stages. The first stage of the offensive was a huge 7-day artillery bombardment involving 500 heavy guns and the use of 1.7 million high explosive and shrapnel shells. And this was a bid to destroy the German trenches and to cut the barbed wire defences before the commencement of an infantry attack, a huge infantry attack. Of course, as we know now, this artillery bombardment failed in its objectives. The German soldiers were sheltered in deep underground bunkers, and a lot of the barbed wire remained uncut. So, on the morning of the offensive, the 1st of July 1916, we get stage 2, which is a series of explosive mines that have been tunnelled under German defences. They were detonated at key points. And then immediately following this, stage 3, 7:30 a.m, we have 120,000 Allied infantry soldiers calmly walking out of their trenches and walking towards the enemy across no man's land. Many of these, tragically, were immediately hit by a hail of German machine gun fire, because, as we know, the artillery barrage had not worked. 20,000 British soldiers sadly died that day, which is still the highest single-day losses for the British Army in its entire history. 40,000 more were wounded, captured or missing. Now, the Battle of the Somme continued in the following months as the Allies continued to throw huge numbers of forces forward in a bid to get that desperate, decisive breakthrough. You see tanks being used in September 1916 as an attempt to do this, but they proved ineffective. They broke down a lot mechanically, and they weren't quick, they weren't very mobile. By the time you get to the autumn, the battlefield was just a sea of mud as the rain fell, and the whole battle crawled to a standstill, really, on the 18th of November 1916, after 5 months of fighting, in which the Allies had gained a maximum of 10 kilometres of land at a cost of 400,000 casualties. Now, the commander of the British Army, Douglas Haig, his decisions have been called into question. He's a very controversial character in British history. He's been referred to as the butcher of the Somme, much criticised for his role. He continued to send men over the top. He refused to change tactics in spite of the huge casualty rates. And, of course, the artillery barrage had failed beforehand. However, some historians have pointed out that Haig was under immense political pressure to get this war over with, and that he simply was not given enough artillery shells or tanks to do the job of overwhelming the German defences. It is true to say that the massive casualty rates and the terrible conditions, not just at the Somme, but also in the whole of the First World War, have really gone on to signify the futility of warfare more than anything else. And in terms of the 20th century, and in terms of remembrance, the First World War and the Somme is at the forefront of that symbolic image of what modern warfare is really all about.